I love the segue of that. So good. Because I wrote down my question, and it had exactly to do with seeing into my vortex or someone else's vortex, not like making a point of going in there and seeing it, but just like all of a sudden getting that flash of like, oh my gosh, like the clarity of the wanting. Like, I want this thing and it's done. And I feel like I've been...
Well, those are steps that go one after another. Clarity of the wanting, and then when you see that it's done is the time when you are releasing it. That's not the same step. Those are two steps. There is a step of observing and choosing and getting the clarity of the wanting, and then releasing it is that part when you see that it's done and now you want to discover it in your physicality.
Yeah, I feel like that's the step that like I'm here discovering right now, because when I get the clarity and then I know it's done, then I feel like, okay, there's something to do about this. Like, where's the inspired action? Or let me wait for the right timing of this to turn into what I've seen.
Well, there is no waiting at this point. The moment you have the clarity of wanting being released, then you're on a lookout, then you're on a hunt, then you're eager to see it, but not to see it in a specific time period. You're eager to discover it. And so this eagerness about discovery is you being so steady, now you're looking around. Only when you release it is when you can then see it. And sometimes that happens almost immediately. In other words, we'll offer you an example when Kosta was bringing so much resistance to the topic, getting the clarity of the wanting about wanting the green card, and then wanting the green card and revisiting about the clarity of wanting the green card, wanting the green card, wanting the green card. Well, there was no any other option at this time. This was a permanent residency after all the visas he's been going through. So he could not fall back into observe and choose anymore, but he could release that in this clarity of wanting that he wants the green card so he can actually receive it. And after 11 months of really just keep looking back about the clarity of the wanting, so much looking back, he was checking the mailbox every single day. After 11 months, he realized that this is an important topic, that he had the clarity about how things are working and decided to release them. In other words, he did not mention it, he did not talk about it, and 11 months immediately shrunk into only 2 to 3 more weeks when he received it. In other words, he's been holding, so the green card was available already to be received within the month or two. But he kept pushing it away because he could not look any other way but in the clarity of wanting. And then realized, well, I knew that this was the clarity of my wanting, not only for these 11 months of the physical process, but this goes even longer. The moment I knew that I want to be in this country, 8 years ago, this has been the clarity of wanting. And now, am I ready after all this time to release it so I can finally experience it? And when he did that, to release it, there was nothing really to look forward to because it still came through that same mailbox that he was expecting it.
So when we have like a little bit more resistance on a topic where we like really want it could potentially just, like, I've noticed that there are some things that I desired months ago, like you're talking about, like the green card, and then I totally forgot about it completely, that I really even had the desire, and then it just came back into my experience in like the manifested form, and then there are other things that just go really quickly because there's less of a strong desire, like there's not so much of a relationship to that desire. Is that?
Well, there is a relationship to each of the desires. It is when you understand that the part of the relationship is to let go.
Yeah. Oh, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And I'm tempted to be like, how do I let go, Weola? And I figure you'll just say, like, you just practice your tools with more
Well, when you release it, don't look, because do not look in the same spot when you release it. Look elsewhere and then you will see it. Oftentimes rather quickly. In other words, what is 3 weeks from the example we gave you compared to 8 years? Really nothing. What is few days compared to months about something? Really nothing. You can have clarity, such clarity and such often referred to as alignment with all of the desires that you receive them immediately. But imagine if you were to receive every desire immediately, there would no be discovery. Looking around is the most satisfying part of your physicality. You just only do not see that if you're only looking around and looking outwards. But when you're, through your tools, get to steadiness and do it from a perspective that is your birthright to be from, which is the wider perspective within expressing within the physicality, well, discovery is the most satisfying. Even when you feel like you're hitting head against the wall sometimes, even when you feel like you're getting aggravated, you're laughing at it. You're laughing at it because you know it all has the value, because it's part of the discovery. And that you will sooner than later discover all of those desires that are really important to you. And not only important to you, but important to you to have experience in this physical iteration. The other ones are maybe stretching it further down the line, and quite a lot of them are really not yours as well, even though you're trying to muscle them through. And so you get the sense about that more you get to practice your steadiness and then eagerly look for where is the next step for you to discover it.
Yeah, you said that to Shane. You said you'll discover that some of the desires aren't even yours, they're just coming from survival mode, and I there's a lot of value in that.
Well, we want you to know that beyond that which is an actual survival mode, which is very few things, everything else that you have is in some kind of survival mode. In other words, when there's so many of those desires that are alongside of that. We'll be as specific as we can because you brought it up and we have not talked about this before. When you're born into physicality, you are not able to take care of yourself in those physical terms. And there is necessity for you to be looking out for someone to take care of you. Your inner guidance and your trust is so strong that predominantly in 99.99% you get taken care of. But there is always this sense of you not even being capable to do that just fully yet. And this is your formative years coming through. And this is really the essence why any of the desires you might be having are having a little bit of that or more of that, which is survival mode. But the moment you see and moment you're on your own feet, moment you realize, sometimes you realize it even before you're able to be on your own, but for sure when you're able to be on your own, providing for yourself even in physical terms and seeing the clarity of how you've been doing it, you then start taking out layer by layer of that, and you see some of those desires popping into your reality because you could strip down this part that was never really true, but part of your experience as you're coming of age and as you're coming of that which is the full experience of stretching your mind and your intellect in a measurement form. And so it is for everyone that predominantly that any of those desires that feel like you need to have them are still innate within you. Some of them because of the generations, some of them because of the stories you inherited, some of them because you observed it with others, but that part that may feel like a survival mode is coming from that place that there might be something or someone that take off some of those basic necessities that you have. And that's why we started recently pointing you always back to that. When you check that your basic survival needs are taken care of, everything else is the bonus. And then you can clearly see which of those desires are already there and which ones need a little bit of direction. In other words, and there is surprise maybe to so many, but there is a finite amount of those desires that still have survival need in them. And so it's rather easy for you to relax them, for you to release them, experience them, and then have really happily ever now, after happily ever now, after happily ever now, after happily ever now. Whereas all of those desires you have are just about the movement and not about necessity.
Oh my gosh. Like I noticed that some of the desires specifically are like, I want this person to connect with me so that I can have this like thing taken care of, you know, whatever, like usually having to do with monetary, you know, like providing for me. If I have this relationship with this person, they will provide for me, and it's like mind blowing what you just said about like it's still just a little bit left over from when we were predominantly looking outward to get our needs met. And
well, we would say that you predominantly have that experience. There is big part of people in the world that have that taken care of, but they're not reminded of it sufficiently enough so they can release it in other areas where it's still trickling down. And when that happens, that's when predominantly there will be that which is called heaven on earth, that which is called the experience of full-fledged human living that can encompass and include others. For as any time you're dragged into survival mode, that something is intensified that way, you cannot be that all-inclusive, and you cannot experience that which is referred to as the heaven on earth. And so there is always an opportunity for you to be more inclusive, but it starts with your awareness. So we understand that sometimes this might feel or take you in a place that it's not as satisfying, but when you go through those basics every day or even few times per day, the sense of ease that you have about your creation is so intensified that you can take on into your awareness so much more variety, so much more measurement that you've ever dreamed about. This is what you've intended with every physical iteration.
Yeah, I feel